Hey everyone, I'm Brian.
And I'm Nikki.
And we are Cooking with the Cotas. I'm a finance guy with no cooking background.
But now some experience.
I do suck less now. It's a plus.
And I'm a registered dietitian with professional culinary training.
And together, we're going to teach you and me how to cook in the kitchen. Today, we are bringing you beans. You know what they say about beans? Beans, the magical fruit. The more you eat, the more you toot. And the more you toot, the better you'll feel. So eat beans at every meal.
But you probably don't want to eat them with every meal because that's going to cause a lot of GI distress.
More importantly, if she ate them at every meal, I would be distressed. That reminds me of the time that she was...
So let's get our mise en place. Everything in its place. All the things we need, minus a little salt for our dish. So with black beans, we chose dried black beans because we want to show you how to easily cook them. These are very cheap, under $2 for 1 pound, so very cost effective. Beans are very important for a healthy diet. They have a lot of good dietary fiber. So getting a few servings in of beans a week is highly recommended. You could get up to 7 or so grams with certain kinds of beans for just a half of a cup. So it's a great source of fiber. We also have some carrots, onion, garlic, and thyme. So these ingredients are going to bring a lot of flavor to the beans, and we'll show you how we do that later. And we also have some cheesecloth and some twine, and that's gonna be a component of the cooking process, which we'll get to. Now we are going to get our aromatics ready. So aromatics are different herbs and spices or even vegetables to give a lot of flavor to the beans. So with the cheesecloth, Brian is going to be cutting these into fairly large rectangles or squares. So cheesecloth is actually used to make cheese. It actually helps strain the curds during the cheese making process. But we're going to use this to hold all of our different aromatics when we are cooking the beans. If you don't have cheesecloth, you can just dump the vegetables and the herbs right into the liquid with the beans. That's completely fine. It's just going to be more difficult to fish it out at the end, but you're still getting all the good flavors from the aromatics. Okay, now that he has the cheesecloth cut, we are going to be making sachets. We're going to each make our own so that I can show Brian how to make them. A sachet is just a combination of different herbs and vegetables and spices in a cloth, and it's often used to make different broths or soups in the culinary world so that you can get all the flavors from certain ingredients without it mixing into the actual broth or soup. I'm gonna just quarter this onion. You can leave the skin on if you'd like. I'm gonna peel it off just because with onions that the dirt could get on the skin and be very difficult to remove. So we just rather have a nice clean flavor from the onions. And typically I keep the root on when I'm cutting onions, but we're gonna actually slice it off because again, that's a spot where you can get a lot of dirt in. with garlic. Sometimes the skin is difficult to remove, so you can lay it on your cutting board, put the flat end of the knife on top, and use the heel of your hand and smash it. That helps release the skin and help release some of the flavor from the garlic. And with this, you could use 1 large sachet, but I wanted to do 2 so that I can show Brian how to make this. All right, so we're gonna put all of our ingredients into the center of the cheesecloth. And we're just gonna wrap it up here, all the corners to the center. And we have our string, we're just gonna tie it at the top. You do wanna make sure that there's no holes in there. It's like a nice little package. Now we're gonna add our sachets to the beans. Again, having these just sitting in there is gonna bring a lot of good flavor because the beans are absorbing some of the liquid that they're being cooked in. So they're gonna be absorbing that flavor from these different herbs and vegetables. We're going to put this on high heat. We're gonna let it boil for 5 minutes and then reduce the heat to a simmer, so light bubbles, and we're gonna cover it. And we're going to keep it on a simmer for at least 1 hour, but possibly up to 2.
Forever.
The reason I have that big gap in time is because it ultimately depends on the bean type, and it also depends on the age of the bean. If you have beans hanging out in your pantry for many months or even a year, they do dry out a little bit more than when you first get them at the store. So it's very important that you keep that into account because those beans may take longer, like closer to the 2 hours. So a good rule of thumb is to have them on a timer for at least an hour. Then you could taste test it, see how it is, and if you need to keep it in longer, set the timer again and taste it every so often to see the consistency of the bean. See if it's soft enough to your liking.
Let's get boiling.
So our beans are done. They were on the stove for about 2 hours. And these beans were on our shelf a little bit longer, so they did take a little bit longer. But they look great. We took the sachets out and we used a couple teaspoons of salt to salt these up because they do still have some liquid. So 2 teaspoons may sound like a lot, but we really want to make sure we're enhancing the flavors of all those ingredients that were soaking with the beans when they were cooking.
It's all about a good flavor profile.
Yep, so these are ready to go. I'm just gonna pour them in this bowl.
Pour some beans on me. Man, how did carrot get in there?
I wonder whose sachet that came from. Doesn't matter whose nose it was his sachet. So, cooking beans from scratch rather than using a can will save you some sodium, or you could at least control how much salt you want to add to it. They are a lot cheaper in the long run too.
Even though it took a few hours to cook and make them, it's not an intensive process because you can leave that on the stove and come back and check on them. So it is super easy to do when you think about the steps that you actually need to do to make them.
Yeah, and they do store very well. I would say up to 5 or 6 days in the fridge, already cooked, or you can freeze them for a couple months and take them out as needed. So you can get those freezer gallon Ziploc bags and store them with the liquid in there and lay them flat in the freezer so that they're not in a big clump and make it difficult when you're trying to defrost them.
The most important thing is that these boys will last until Taco Tuesday, when you need that beans, and then you can just mash them and make some tacos. Well, there you have it. It's a nice, easy way to use those dried beans that you may have been sitting in your pantry for 2 years because you don't know what to do with them, and make some delicious beans out of them.
Yep, and this is a good base for different recipes if you want to add beans to your tacos or salads or whatnot. So while this may not seem like a dish in itself, this is a good starter for whatever you want to use them for. Well, thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode today of Cooking with the Cotas.
Hey, thanks again for watching Cooking with the Cotas today. Make sure you subscribe to our page, like this video, and turn on those notifications so you see our next video that comes out. And as always, feel free to comment below or on any of our social medias what videos you want to see from us and what recipes you want us to make for you. We're here to help you and me learn. Thanks again for watching.